Generational differences is been around forever. In fact, a workshop that I gave on generational differences, our very first slide is a quote by Socrates in the 5th BC. And if you read the quote, and we do ahead of time, we ask people who said it. Well, they think it was their next door neighbor or a colleague in a meeting. Generational differences have been around for centuries, but the difference today is that we have no apprenticeship program. See, and we all, in yesteryear, you had an opportunity to actually learn your job before you did your job. Today we welcome you in, give you a small onboarding program or practice, and then we expect you to be fully functioning. And when you're not, we ask why that didn't take place. Also in yesteryear, you had different generations who had the concept that helping others grow and learn was going to be apropos for success. Well, we know that career paths are different today. They are more in buckets of nickels. So you have someone who's out there for 5 years and they're ready to switch jobs. For some folks, they will say a person has learned nothing in those 5 years. So how in the world can they go and continue to be successful? The reality is generational differences are impacted greatly because we do have 4 different generations all working on the same thing at the same time, and we expect the same outcome. What we fail to recognize is there's differences in methodology of thinking, methodology of working on projects, and then methodology of what we can get to in terms of success. And in fact, I'd argue that success in many for different generations looks frankly differently. So what can we do to make sure that generational differences are addressed? We have to be focused on them. In the learning and development world specifically, there's really 3 main buckets. When we look at instructional design, we look at delivery and evaluation. We tend to look at these areas through a generational lens, and sometimes we're not even aware of it. I'll give you one example. For baby boomers, when it comes to instructional design, they want to see themselves in there. They want to make sure that there's value for them going forward. When we look at delivery for baby boomers, having a person who's knowledgeable, frankly the expert in the room, standing in front or being in front of the webcast is the right way to go. It's an expert-driven methodology. And when it comes to evaluation, the program worked, the training intervention worked, as I like to call them, the learning engagement worked, if I got something out of it. So a baby boomer's benchmark of success is often very internal. Well, for Generation X is very data-driven. So for Generation X, data tells a story. So when it comes to instructional design, how long did it take us? How can we identify the level 1, 2, and 3 responses back to it? Did we get? Generation X, when we look at delivery, it doesn't really matter who's helping to facilitate the dialogue, because the dialogue is going to be conducted amongst the folks who are in the room, because there's an expectation that already there's going to be a multitude of experts that are there as well. And then you look at the area of evaluation. Well, again, because for Generation X, data is so important, if somebody says they like it, a Generation X leader will smile and say, that's wonderful, but why do you like it and what data can you point back to help me understand and interpret and then evangelize why others should like it as well? So just giving those tiny bits of contrast, it's not that different generations can't operate effectively in looking at evaluation, instructional design, and in delivery. Of course they can. But what's their first reaction? What's your first reaction? What's most comfortable for you? Well, as you get and grow a greater generational competence, then you can have a greater understanding as to what's easiest for you and what environment you work under. If you're aware of it, then you can help to ensure that that's not the only way that your learning programs are designed, developed, and delivered in your organization. If you do that, what you're going to do is you're going to develop a more effective learning profile for your organization, because you're allowing generational differences and frankly generational understanding to have its place in learning and development. Because I think the goal of all learning professionals is to make sure that their programs are, 1, effective, and 2, translated in helping the business bottom line. Well, there's ways to do that and ensure that you're being aware of and you're embracing generational differences. Those differences aren't always negative. There's a lot of positives, but it's your own understanding of those differences as a leader that's going to help you be more effective moving forward. The rising storm of tomorrow isn't going to be baby boomers who are welcoming in their sons and daughters. It is going to be between Generation X and Generation Y. Generation Y has 16 different names. I'll just call them the coddle generation for a moment. Has generally been given a script along the way. This is what you should do in order to be successful in graduate school. I'm sorry, in undergraduate school and graduate school. And oh, by the way, if you're having some issues, let me know and I'll talk to your professor. I'll make sure you get whatever you need to be successful along the way. Generation X absolutely did not have a script. And what the research tells us, Generation X oftentimes it didn't feel wanted in an organization, so they had to fight their way in. And they tend to be a little bit of what we call the truth tellers in the organization. They're going to tell it like it is. Just get to the bottom line. Let people know what they're thinking. Let people know what they should be moving toward and how they should be operating. Well, no one asked them to do that, but Generation X feels compelled to do that. Generation Y, looking for a script, wanting to be coddled a little bit along the way, will then turn to their Generation X cohort and say, hey, well, how do you do A, B, or C? Well, for a while, the Generation X person will show them. At some point, the Generation X person says, wait a minute, I've got my work to do. I have this Generation Y person who just wants me to tell them everything that I've done in the scripted way to do it, so they learn all the shortcut. And the incentive for me to do that is what? Well, my baby boom boss is saying, well, just help the Gen Y. They're new to the organization. They just need a little prodding along the way. And the Gen X is smiling, saying, okay, and in the back of their mind, they're saying, don't think I'm going to do that. Just pause for a moment, because when the Gen X leader takes over, example, a learning and development profile, he or she may be thinking to themselves, okay, one of the very first things I'm going to do is to ensure that there's great fairness and equity all across the board for all the different generations. And at times, to some other leaders, it's going to seem that they're being a little bit hard on the Gen Y. They're going to provide a script when a script is available and not provide a script when a script is not available. And the way to create harmony in that is to recognize it up front, that a one-size-fits-all methodology for onboarding, for instance, is just simply not going to be effective. So when you're onboarding folks and you're helping them learn about your learning and development profile in your organization, in order to help create greater harmony, is you want to recognize that there's a first-person reaction. Generally, that's what we talk about. We talk about generational differences. It's what you think of first. What's common for your generation? And in this case, trying to create harmony, you're going to want to recognize that Gen Y, when it comes to learning and development, like they got in college, wants a syllabus. Something that spells out exactly what they're going to learn, how they're going to learn it, and what the end result is. Well, as we know, sometime in action learning, what takes place is there's going to be learning amongst the group. Some of it is unintended, but it still has great relevance. And therefore, to be honest, we always can't map out every single learning engagement and the result that takes place. But we know that just by the interaction, that there's going to be some great things that happen. We have to be self-effacing and let folks know that there are different methodologies of learning that's going to take place, and some might be a little bit out of our comfort zone, and therefore encourage people to participate. When we do that, we have a greater honest dialogue between Generation X and Generation Y, which is absolutely necessary moving forward, because these are the two big cohorts that are going to take our organizations in a new direction. And if we can help them get along better, we're going to have a workforce and a workplace with greater harmony.